Hello, I don't think anyone is here. Uh, I'm just testing my audio and video, and I will quickly check it with a chat message if this is working. Okay, I think there are a few people here. We will wait for a minute or so before we get going. Thank you for coming. We will start with um, saying Shubha Vijaya to everyone. I hope you had a wonderful pujo, and I hope your days will also be great in the upcoming festive occasions such as Lokhi Pujo, Kali Pujo, and the like. As most of you know, the dates for NET had been declared long back, and we are now inching closer to the day on which English NET would be held. Previously, I had shared with my thoughts about how to prepare for UGC NET paper 2 English. So now today I will also share with you some thoughts about paper 1, which is what today's class is all about. Not class, maybe YouTube live. I'm used to taking YouTube, live classes for NET, which is why I might be referring to it as a class. This is also applicable for UGC NET paper 1 for the subsequent batches, and also for set paper 1, WB set paper 1 as well. So I hope that you will be here with us till the very end. And those of you who are watching this live right now, I would humbly request you to share this live stream's link with your friends, foes, colleagues, admirers, and anyone who might be interested. I will also take a quick second to just share the link of this YouTube live on my Facebook page and Facebook profile, so that people who wanted to join can, and we will get going in a bit. The turnout is lesser than the last time, as I had anticipated previously. So it's not that much of a bother for me. Let me quickly tell you what I'll be doing throughout the 1 hour where we will be together. There are some people who had taken classes from me. Thank you for joining back once again. It's a pleasure to see you. And those of you who are here, I would tell you the structure which we will follow. And like the last time, by the end of this live, I will also be sharing with you a link of study materials for paper 1, like I had shared for paper 2. And I might also be willing to share one mock test, free trial mock test for those of you who might be interested. So if you're here with me, please stay on till the very end, where I'll be sharing with you a link for all the study materials for paper 1, and also a link to a live mock test, not a live mock test, but a pre-recorded mock test, which you can attempt for paper 1. Some of you might have attempted it if you are taking my classes, and I would also, do a short plug-in of my classes right at the end of this YouTube live. So welcome. Our first topic for today is what are the 10 chapters which we have for paper 1, followed by how we will time ourselves if we are bound to that 1 hour mark, which we were not bound to in the last time in December 2021. Next, we will talk about how we need to practice, especially when it comes to chapters like data interpretation, mathematical aptitude, logical reasoning, and so on and so forth. Whether we need to refer to any particular books for these chapters, which books are good, whether we should refer to a physical book or a PDF would be just fine with me. All of these we will discuss, followed by what is the order of questions which you should attempt in this particular endeavor. And finally, what is the disadvantage of marking any question for review when you are attempting a computer-based test? And if you have any questions, you can put them down in the comment box. I will address them right at the end of today's session. So thank you again to everyone who is here, all the 16 people. We will start. Firstly, let's talk about what exactly are the 10 chapters. Now, since this is a YouTube live and not a Google Meet, I cannot sadly share my screen with you. I think I remember all the 10 chapters. It would be a disaster if I don't. So we will start with teaching aptitude, followed by research methodology, which are the first two chapters, followed by comprehension, data interpretation, mathematical reasoning, logical reasoning, communication, information and communication technology, higher education and research, and people and environment. I think I have named all 10. I might have missed a chapter here or there. Let me just quickly refer to the chapter divisions in our Pearson book, which is something we will be referring to very widely. I believe we have done, yes, research, teaching, communication, comprehension, mathematical, logical, data, ICT, people and higher education. All 10 we have mentioned, thank God. Um, so now I would tell you a very important trick which is here for all of us to learn. I believe all of you here are familiar with the story of Icarus, who loved the sun too close and too dearly, and he flew too close to the sun with his wings of wax. And then, when he came too close, his wax wings melted and he fell down. Upon which we have a beautiful poem by Winston Hugh Auden called Amuse the Buart. Some of you might have read it in your UG or PG days. It's a beautiful poem. I strongly recommend it for paper 2. Anyway, our preparation should also be like Icarus. We should not attempt to go too close to the sun, because that would be very risky for us. What do I mean when I say this? It's an analogy which I often find to be very useful in our context. We must know our limitations really well. What are our limitations? Well, first of all, none of us are Sheldon Coopers or Mike Rosses or Professor Shonku or Robert Langdon. We don't have eidetic memory that anything we will read, we will quickly register in our brains and it will just stay there for eternity. It's not going to happen, right? So what are we going to do? We are going to try and remember and understand which are the chapters which require a minimum amount of memorizing or rote learning and maximum amount of working out. So there are two chapters which I have identified in my experience as a veteran of NET exams. I've been giving it since 2018. This is the first time when I'm not appearing for it, because I was of the opinion that once you get a job, you don't need a JRF. I have been proved wrong subsequently, so I'll be appearing for it again next time. Anyway, that's not the point. This is the first time I'm not appearing for it since 2018. So I've appeared for NET quite a few number of times, having qualified it 4 times. So with my experience of having appeared so many times, and I've also taught 3 batches of NET students, some of whom might argue that they have benefited a tad bit from my tutelage, some of whom who are, I believe, here with us today. So 2 chapters which I have identified for this purpose, which we will eliminate, are the last 2 chapters, People, Development and Environment and Higher Education System. These are the 2 chapters which I don't teach in my class, nor do I recommend that anyone learn these chapters by heart, precisely because of the way in which these chapters are constructed. What is the fundamental problem with these chapters? Let us take a look. Firstly, these chapters don't have anything for you to understand, right? There is nothing for you to truly understand in these chapters. All you have to do is memorize these chapters through and through. There's just thorough memorization, and I don't like remembering things a lot, though there are certain things which I like. There are certain things which I like to remember, like the Mohishashur Mordini or lyrics of Rabindra Sangeet. But then the information which is there in this chapter or in these 2 chapters, they are easily available on Google. Why on earth would I try to remember it? And they never come to your aid unless your subject for paper 2 is education or EVS. If your subject for paper 2 is education or EVS, then I strongly suggest that you read these two chapters. It's applicable for only those, or even if your subject is political science for that matter, even then I would suggest that you read these two chapters. But if your subject is anything other than these three, political science, environmental education or environmental science, I'm not sure what the subject is for NET, and obviously education, if your subject for paper 2 is anything except these three, I suggest you skip these three chapters, because there is a lot to learn which you won't find useful in your subsequent days. But then it's also applicable for most of the other chapters, but we can't skip all the 10 chapters and expect to crack NET, right? In this context, it is very important for us to understand something very crucially, which is that when we understand NET as an exam, we have to understand that paper 1 is more important than paper 2. I had a friend, I might have mentioned him in the last video, Shuchishmito Khatua, who got through JRF right in his first attempt in the year 2018 or 19, I don't exactly remember. But it was back in the day when I first shot my first YouTube video in 2021 about how do we prepare for UGC NET. There he had kindly consented to share his thoughts as a comment or in the description section of that video, where he had mentioned that paper 1's preparation is highly important, and it's also a lot about luck, about how you prepare. All of these things are equally important. Those of you who are thinking that you will not prepare for paper 1, you are grossly mistaken, and that is not something you can afford. Paper 1 is the one paper where you have total control, where the syllabus is known to you, where you can easily secure 40 out of 50 questions, right? If you prepare well. Of course, we will try and attempt 40 out of 50 questions. We will not get all of them correct. But if you try to get 40 out of 50 questions correct, you will get 35, 36 right. And that will ease out your path towards, clearing the NET and going closer to JRF once you get through that threshold. So this is what I'm trying to tell you. So we have to prepare the remaining 8 chapters. What remaining 8 chapters are we left with? Teaching aptitude, research aptitude, comprehension, communication, mathematical reasoning, logical reasoning, data interpretation, and ICT. Out of these 8, there are 4 chapters, which 5 actually, no 4: comprehension, mathematical reasoning, logical reasoning, and data interpretation, which according to me are workoutable chapters. These 4 chapters, 4 into 5, 20. These 20 questions should be your priority number 1. So data, logic, math, and comprehension. Even if you're not a student of English, the comprehension that comes in paper 1 is not that difficult, unless they give a poem comprehension, in which case it's not very fair to the other subject students. Fair to us who are applying for English, but then I want the playing field to be fair to one and all. Anyway, the comprehension is also not that difficult. It's pretty workoutable. I will also talk briefly about all the chapters, especially these 4 chapters. So let's start with comprehension only, since that is a big issue for many of us, especially those of you who are not applying from English background or whose subject is not English. Comprehension, when you are dealing with, there are 2 types of questions. First is the objective or the informative question, quantitative question, where the answer is directly given in the passage. You don't have to work too hard for this. All you have to do is literally take a look at the options which are given in the options, and then look in the passage. Shoilaj, I'll come to your question at the last. Okay, thank you for asking. What I'm trying to say is that when comprehensions occur, the objective questions are basically questions whose answers are directly given in the passage itself. And then there are subjective or qualitative questions, where it's basically based on your interpretation. How quickly or how accurately can you interpret the comprehension or the essence of what is said in the comprehension? That is something which people often think about. So keeping that in mind, we also have to think about how exactly this comprehension thing pans out. The comprehension you have to attempt as a unit. Like you have to attempt the data interpretation questions as a unit. These are the 2 sets of questions, where the 5 questions from this particular chapter will come in a unit. That is 5 consecutive questions, because the passage or the table for data or the data for the data will be there on the left hand side of your screen, and the questions will be on the right hand side of your screen, or the data will be on the top of your screen and the questions will be at the bottom of your screen, something like that. So these are the 10 questions which you should attempt in a group. All chapters questions you should preferably attempt in a group, but in the latest years of net we have seen a tendency where the questions themselves are not grouped. So what will you do in that case, right? If the questions are not grouped themselves, you won't waste time looking where is the next logical reasoning question. No, you will attempt the questions as they come from 1 to 50, and the data interpretation and comprehension questions will come as a group, and those you will attempt as a group. If the remaining questions like logic or mathematical interpretation, mathematical reasoning, if they come as a group, well enough. What is the disadvantage if they don't come as a group? The thing is that when you're doing mathematical reasoning questions, your brain, by the time it reaches the third, fourth, fifth question, your brain is more prepared to deal with maths, especially since most of us are from humanities background and our knowledge in math is in minus. I'm hoping because my knowledge in math is in minus. So we are not very keen to do mathematical questions because we don't like them. So what we will do instead is we will try to do them at one go, like mathematical reasoning and data interpretation at one go we will do, and we will be like, I'm glad that this thing has been lifted off my shoulders. So instead of that, even if they're not grouped, don't worry too much about it. Don't go looking for the questions here and there. That's something which people often do, and that ends up stealing our time, which is something I will come to in a bit. These are the two chapters which you will deal with in a group. Other than that, we are left with logical reasoning and what else are we left with? Mathematical reasoning. These questions, there are many types of logical reasoning questions like analogy questions, statement reason, Venn diagram, relationship. I think relationship is a mathematical reasoning question. There is no like such hard and fast rule that this can be mathematical reasoning, cannot be logical reasoning, unless it has like actual numbers in it. Coding, decoding, often thought of as mathematical reasoning, can be easily categorized under logical reasoning as well. More, what I'm trying to tell you here is that these two chapters are interlinked with one another. While you are reading logical reasoning, you should also read mathematical reasoning. While you are practicing logical reasoning, you should also practice mathematical reasoning. The reason behind this is that once you practice mathematical reasoning, your brain will get sharper for logical reasoning and vice versa. So you should always keep this in mind, that these two chapters are intrinsically linked, as is the chapter data interpretation linked with mathematical reasoning. So these three chapters are more or less linked with one another. And then we have comprehension, which we have already discussed. Other than that, we have teaching aptitude, where our primary attempt would be to find the morally correct answer. I had discussed this in my class, in my net classes at length, about how morally right answers are formed. Keep in mind the fact that these questions are set by people who are backed by the central government, and think about the tendencies the central government has about promoting a certain kind of ideology. I'm not going too deep into this because there might be other people who might be listening, but you know what I'm trying to talk about: the ethical conundrum of the teacher, the gurukul system of placing the teacher at a higher position and the student at a lower position, where the current pedagogical framework is trying to treat both the teacher and the student, you and me, as equals. But then the teaching aptitude chapter actually maintains some sort of pseudo hierarchy, which they want us to believe, but I don't think we should. What we should do or shouldn't do in terms of our beliefs and ideologies in real life should not have anything to do with how we are attempting these questions in general, because the attempting of these questions in general has to do with putting up of a facade that we are agreeing with you. We are not. Even if we are not, what's the harm in marking a answer which they will think right? They here means the big other, which the big other might think right? So just think about what is logistically a smart choice for you, and then choose that, because that is what will give you a higher chance of getting a right answer. Then we have research aptitude, which is something which people who are already enrolled in MPhil, PhD, or have completed a research degree will find very easy, because most of this we have done in our research methodology classes. Like quantitative analysis, qualitative analysis, data collection, sample size, citation, referencing, indexing, mm, types of things which are found here. I can suggest that for research methodology, look up the questions which come in PhD entrances, or before 2020, where MPhil entrances were a thing, where there was a subjective or where there was an objective question. There was often a section on research methodology in UG and in PhD level exams in various universities. These questions are often repeated in NET paper 1 or paper 2, since English has an RM in English chapter now incorporated in it. Questions, I will also recommend the university, actually, the University of Hyderabad. For other subjects also, you are more than welcome to look up their PhD and MPhil questionnaires from previous years, where you will find a substantial amount of questions about research or on research methodology. Or DU or CU, CET, PG exams in the past also have some research methodology based questions, which you can consult for your own building of information base. Next we are left with information and communication technology and communication. These two chapters again are related to one another, because one chapter is just about communication, the way in which communication works. I had a very long PPT about communication prepared back when I used to teach business communication in JD Builder Institute from March to September 2021. I might share that slide with you here if you want later in the course of this live. But then communication, what are the things that we need to cover? We need to cover the types of communication, the forms of communication, the several intersections of these communications that one can experience while communicating with one another, the barriers of communication, and the models of communication. These things are easily available in the Pearson book. But then if you want to know more about this, I suggest you look at MBA programs offered by Symbiosis. Their PDFs are available on their website for free. You can download them and read the communication section on their MBA program module for free. And it has a much more detail oriented approach towards the entire thing, which you can really take into consideration if you want to ace this chapter really badly. And finally we come to ICT, which is our last chapter for this particular section of our video. When we are talking about ICT, people who come from a computer background, or people who have had computer up until 10 or 12, I did not, have a lot of advantage, because most of what is there in this chapter was taught to you in school. And if you paid attention, again, which I did not in school, then you would remember a lot of this stuff. Especially it has a lot of acronyms, a lot of basic idea about what a computer is, how to send an email, and other things like that. So this is the entire structure of the ICT chapter. There is nothing much to say about the chapter, except the fact that there's a lot to memorize in this chapter, like the chapters of higher education and people environment. But then there's also something to understand here. The gates, there are several, NOR gate, OR gate, AND gate, NAND gate. We studied this back in the Neolithic era, in and around 2008-9. I think some of you were not even born then. Anyway, that is an exaggeration. What I was trying to say in this context is that try and focus on these 8 chapters most. And when you're doing past year's question paper, which I will come to in the third section of today's talk, I will also talk about how you can avoid the questions of the other sections. Right. Now we will come to the second sector of our lives session today, which is how will you time yourselves. This timing section is not really applicable if you have 3 hours for 2 papers, because then the time is not an issue for most people. But if you are very unlucky, you will only get 1 hour for paper 1, which is what happened up until very recently. We should prepare ourselves accordingly, that we will only get 1 hour for paper 1. Now when you're getting 1 hour for paper 1, it's a very tricky piece of information to dawdle with. Why? Because you have 50 questions and 60 minutes to answer them in. And there are like 20 questions which need solving or which need more than possibly 1 minute to answer. Especially logical reasoning, data interpretation, mathematical reasoning, these questions might take up a lot of your time. So what will you do? This will also depend on your order of questions, which is the fourth topic which we will cover today. I will talk about that in a bit. But think about this. How could you solve this issue? Think about it yourself. You will quickly realize that there are two approaches. First is you do the time consuming questions upfront, like at the very beginning. At the very beginning, when you do the difficult questions or the time consuming questions, then you know that 30 minutes I will take for doing these 20 questions, and then the rest of the 30 questions I will do in the next 30 minutes. This is one approach. This approach is risky precisely because we are not machines. There is no guarantee that we will be able to solve the 20 questions in 30 minutes. It might take us 35. And if it takes us 35 minutes, then we will be screwed. Because we will be thinking that we just have 25 minutes to solve 30 questions, we will panic, our anxiety will increase, we will have little sweat drops on our forehead, which will be very photogenic, but very harmful for us, and then we will end up making multiple mistakes. So what are we supposed to do? This is not an approach which I suggest. Rather, what I will suggest is you do the opposite. You take the easy questions. Firstly, you take the 2 chapters which you haven't done. But then you might ask, but Dada, you just said that we shouldn't go about finding the questions. No, but say for example, if you see that questions 1 to 5 is data interpretation, then you can directly go to question 6. Or whenever you see a comprehension question, whenever you see that comprehension passage is starting, then you know that the next 5 questions will be comprehension. You can just skip to the 6th question from that. For example, if it's 11, then 11 to 15 will be comprehension. You can directly skip to 16. If you see the data interpretation is 21, then you know that up to 25 there will be data interpretation only. You directly go to question number 26. Right. So whenever you're dealing with these, first you deal with the easy questions. What will this do? This will make sure that you solve the 30 questions in 20 to 25 minutes. You will be able to solve, because it's a simple question of you know or you don't know. There's nothing to solve. So even if it has even happened that 30 questions have been solved in 15 minutes. Because you just read a question, you see the options, you either know or you don't know. Even if you don't know, you answer something based on akkar bakkar bambe bo, you choose and you move on. Now you are left with say 40 to 45 minutes to solve 30 questions. Sorry, to solve 20 questions. Now you will see that this will give you a lot of edge. Now you will go to straight data interpretation. Then you will go to straight mathematical reasoning. Then you will go to straight logical reasoning, and then straight comprehension. I have unsuccessfully incorporated the order bit into the timing bit. These things happen when you talk about attempting the paper, because all of these things are interconnected with one another. Timing and ordering of questions are interconnected, so it's very obvious that one will overlap with the other. So there's nothing to worry about here. What I'm trying to say here is that once you take this approach into account, you will then see how easy it is for you to solve the paper in 1 hour. And once you get the hang of it, you will find enjoyment in it. Because solving 50 questions in 60 minutes is no mean feat. It's a very difficult task to do, because they don't want you to solve all 50 questions. And if you can solve all 50 questions by reading the question and then reading the answers and then choosing the answer and solving all the 20 solvable questions, then I can assure you, you are in a better position than 99% of applicants to clear the paper. Why am I saying this? Because if your time is bound for paper 1, I can assure you, by knowing people's expectations, turnovers, and performances in the NET exam for the last 5 years, I can assure you that 99% of people won't be able to finish the paper. What do I mean by finish? They will attempt all 50 questions, all right, but they won't be able to, read the question, read the options, take an educated guess, have a higher chance of getting the question right, which is something you have to do. I will also talk about how you can take an educated guess in case you are not here for my live session that is for the last session. I will also share my live sessions link from last, mm, you know, session, because some of you might not have been here. So I have shared it in the comment box. You can, click on that and save it to your watch later, or add it to some playlist so that you remember to watch it later on when this live is over. Don't go now and watch it. Let this live be over, and then you can go ahead and watch that one out if you want to. So what I was talking about is that how you can time yourselves well. It's very important, because first paper is the key to your success. When it comes to the second paper, especially those of us who are applying for English, we are faced with a problem that there is no such syllabus. So there is no hard and fast way of preparing, which I had said in my last video as well. But when it comes to your paper one, you can rest assured that your preparation will be top notch, because there is a syllabus and there is a good book to refer to, which is Pearson's paper one book, KVS Madan. Most of you are, I'm sure, are already aware of it. So this is the timing bit which I wanted to cover, but then there is also something which I wanted to tell you. Suppose if this happens, that you see that 55 minutes have passed and you are still left with, say, 8 questions or 9 questions. What are you supposed to do then? My suggestion is, try and attempt as many questions as you can till you have like 30 seconds left. Listen to me very carefully here. Try and attempt as many of those questions honestly as you can in those remaining 5 minutes. Say 5 minutes means 300 seconds, right? So in 300 seconds, you give 270 seconds to solve, say, 5 out of the 9 questions or 6 out of the 9 questions remaining. And in the remaining 30 seconds, go to all the remaining 4 questions or 3 questions and click the same option. You will have a better chance of getting it right. Why? Of course, probability. Even if you click, say, A for all the 9 options, by probability, you will get 2 right. But if you solve 6 questions, or if you take an educated guess for the 6 questions, out of those 6 questions only, you will get 2 right. And out of the remaining 3, you have like almost a 1 out of 3 chance of getting 1 right. 1 out of 4 actually, but I'm saying 1 out of 3 for your convenience. So what I'm trying to say is that even if you see that you're running out of time and there are a lot of questions left, try solving as many as you can till you have just 30 seconds left on your clock. Your clock generally is visible on the top right hand corner of your computer screen. And it will also turn red once you have just about a minute left. So you can clearly see red. That means my time is running out. So till 30 seconds or 40 seconds are left, solve as many as you can. Be a little quick if you can, but don't be so quick that you make a mistake, which is something I will talk about right now. Doing the questions, solving the questions quickly is important, but don't take the pace to such an extent that you are left with a wrong answer. Happened with me. Those of you who are here with me for my classes know that when I do maths, I make a lot of mistakes, and then I see that the answer which I came up with was not there in even the options, so I have to redo it. I am not even ashamed of admitting it, because I'm not very good at maths. My concept is very good, but my calculations are wrong. If you give me a calculator, there is a very thin possibility of me getting any question wrong. But then you're not allowed a calculator in NET, which is something which most of you might not be knowing. Or maybe most of you know, I don't know. I did not know it the first time I took my calculator with me. The first time I went to give a NET, it was an pen and paper NET on an OMR sheet, something which might seem bizarre to you people now. But I am very ancient, almost as ancient as the ancient one in Doctor Strange. Anyway, moving on to the next topic, which is practice. Why is practice important? Let us think about that for a minute. Practice is important because of three primary reasons. Firstly, this is a common three, and for those of you who know, this is an uncommon three. Silent reference to Quentin Tarantino's. No. There are three ways of dealing with practice or knowing why practice is important. There is this common proverb that no one is perfect, and there is then a contradictory proverb that practice makes a man or a woman perfect. So which one is true? It's not that practice can actually make someone perfect, but the more important feature of practice is that it makes you less prone to error. When you practice a lot, you have heard stories about Roger Federer, Virat Kohli, and the like, about how these people have put in hours after hours for decades at length, and then they have reached the pinnacle of their success. Do you think they reached it right from day one? No. They practiced and practiced and practiced. So the first reason why you should practice is to decrease your errors. The more you practice, the less errors you will make. And if you make less errors, no, your generic attitude towards the paper will be better. Now, there are many free papers available on the Pearson book. I think if I am, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 past years, and two mocks, I believe. Two mocks or three mocks, so total around 15 question papers are there in your netbook. In addition, I will also be sharing another link with you very shortly. Stay on for that. So how many papers should you practice? I remember having told my students for the net batch that you need to practice 5,000 MCQs. So on an average, if I divide that by 10, 500 MCQs per chapter. And even if you are not doing the two chapters, you should practice MCQs from it nonetheless. I'm not saying that you should memorize anything from the higher educational people environment chapters, but practice your 500 MCQs from them nonetheless. Now you might be wondering, where will I get 500 MCQs? Pearson doesn't have it. Pearson has like 300, 350, 400 maximum per chapter. Where will I get 5,000 MCQs? I will tell. You will get 5,000 MCQs across books. There are many more books like Truman, Tata McGraw-Hill, Aryant. You take 4 books, you will get more than 5,000 MCQs. You will get 10,000. And then you take your pick. Whichever one you like, you do. But while consulting books, it is another important thing for you to know while consulting books is that when you are reading these books, you must know that there is a very good room for error. These books are rife with mistakes, especially if these books are old. If you are buying a second-hand book, which I will not recommend, invest a little and buy a first-hand book if you can. If you cannot, at least buy a second-hand book that's not very old. And even if you can't do any of these, just get a PDF. I have them. I will share it with you right now. Give me a moment. I will share the study materials link with you here. You can click on that and save it for later. Those of you who want to access free study material for your net preparations, this I have shared with many of my students, and when I had a WhatsApp group, which I have since left for several reasons. Anyway, so practice. The first reason is to reduce your errors. The second is to know your weaknesses. If you practice a lot, you will know where your mistakes are happening, and then you can work on them really well. It's actually related to the first point where I said that you can reduce your errors. Your reduction of errors will only work if you think about the way in which your entire structuring of the paper works. So what should you do in case you find out, say, that I'm faltering in logical reasoning? You buy a good book, or you download a good book of logical reasoning from LibGen or Z Library. If you are not familiar with the new Mirror just drop me a text. I will send you the link for the new mirror. The second reason is to find out where your weaknesses are. And unlike war, where you focus on your strength, this is an exam where you should focus on your weakness and make it your strength. Because when you are attempting these 8 chapters, there is no room for you to say that no, I will be weak in 1 chapter and be strong in 7, weak in 2 chapters, strong in 6. No, you have to be equally strong in all 8 chapters. Only then will you stand a good chance of getting JRF. Right. So this is the second reason why you must practice. And the third is it will reduce your exam stress, exam anxiety. Many of us suffer from stage fright. And stage fright is not always. Stage fright doesn't mean it has to be on a stage. It could just mean performance anxiety in general. There are many people who have scored like 70, 75 out of 100, 70, 72, 74 out of 100 in my mock tests, and then they have not been able to replicate that in the original test. Why? Because there was performance anxiety, and then they were afraid. See, if you are afraid, no, which is something practice will make you not. The more you practice, the less you will be afraid. Because when you will be afraid, your fear will, get the better of you. You will always be on your tiptoes as to what will happen next, what will happen next. There is this slok in Gita, which some of you might be familiar with. It goes, Karmanne badhikaraste mafaleshu kadachara maha karma fal hetur bhumatit swanchat swakarmani, which means you should focus on your work and not the fruit. The fruit will come automatically. This was said by Sri Krishna to Arjun during the beginning of Kurukshetra, where Arjun was refusing to fight his own family members, especially his Gurudev and his Pitama. So this is something which I live by life. I try to live my life by. Not that I always succeed, but I always try. So you should also try and live your life by this mantra, which is something practice will allow you to do. Practice will, allow you to do nishkam karma, which is a very good and important philosophy, which is there in the Indian subcontinent. Next, we will talk about the order, which we have already mentioned while we were doing practice. But then the order of questions, something very important for me to mention, is that the order will not be important for everyone, or it will not be the same for everyone. Actually, not important. Order will be equally important for everyone, but the order will not be the same for everyone. That is what I'm trying to say. Just because I am suggesting you an order, doesn't mean that that order will be the best for you. If your order is, say, doing comprehension at the first, then data, then logic, then math, then ICT, then communication, then teaching, then research, let it be, no issues, and then you will do the rest at the last. You do you. But whatever order you are doing, please ensure that you are maintaining that order throughout. Now here there is a common question, is that do the questions in the NET exam come in the order in which their chapters are arranged in the NET official syllabus? The simple answer is you wish. No, they don't. They come in a haphazard order, quite like the Enigma during the Second World War, which was used by Germany. So they just, randomly place questions here, there, and anywhere. They don't even, group the questions properly, like logical reasoning questions in a bundle of 5, communication questions in a bundle of 5, ICT questions in a bundle of 5. They don't even bother doing about that. Now here, logical reasoning has introduced something very boring and mundane called the Indian logical system, the Nyaya system of India, which was followed in the Gurukul, which is a silent, subtle way of promoting fill in the blanks. Don't need to read that. If a question comes from that, you will use your common sense to answer. If you want to mug up 15 pages of random arguments, be my guest. But I will not suggest that. It is a very recent addition to the syllabus of logical reasoning and the chapter in general. Also, this has been included in the teaching aptitude chapter. But for those of you who are not sure about whether you want to teach in a college or you want to teach in a school, or those of you who have doubts, I would actually suggest that you might want to take a look at higher education, because it actually gives you insights. the insightful bits of that chapter are not asked as questions, which is very sad, but there are important insights, especially in the Pearson book, which is the KVS Madan book available in the Google Drive link, which I just shared with you right now a few minutes ago. But the teaching aptitude chapter you have to learn, because that actually tells us how to communicate well with the people with who are our target audience. So that is the order. That is more or less it about the order in which we will try and attempt the questions. And finally, we will talk about the mark for review option, which is a very bad thing for everyone. What is the mark for review option? If you have ever given the net, you will know that there is an option called mark for review, which marks your question patterns block in the right as yellow for that particular question. Never ever do that. I've already mentioned this in my class and I'm mentioning it here again. There are certain cases where the computer does not recognize it as a full-fledged answer, which it should according to the rules of net, but then you cannot prove it in any way, shape, or form. Never mark any question for review. While you are starting out your question, just write down question numbers 1 to 50 on the rough sheet that they're giving. And if there is any question which you want to mark for review, circle that in your rough sheet and then come back to it at the last if you have the time. But don't trust the computer. Any question which you are marking, just click on the right option, which according to you is the right option. Click on that, select, save and next, and then go and make sure that every question by the end of your 1 hour, every question is turned green on your right hand side grid of your 50 questions for paper 1 and 100 questions for paper 2, and the 2 hours for paper 2 is also over. So your target should be to make 150 questions green out of 150, because only then will you be able to ensure that your entire structure of the paper is well done and all the questions which you have attempted have been taken into consideration. So that is more or less it. If you have questions, not many of you are left, please ask in the chat box. I saw Shoilaj's question. I will answer that now. Shoilaj has asked, is paper 1 comprehension and others of SSC level or like bank? I have no idea what SSC level or bank level comprehensions are, but I do have an idea of what GRE level comprehensions are. It is much easier than GRE or paper 2 comprehension for English. But then if you are preparing for other government level exams, then I suggest you prepare for the higher or more tough level of comprehension, because that will allow you to fathom the level of tougher comprehensions, and then when you will be faced with easier comprehension questions, you won't have any issues with it, right? So if those of you who have joined me today, thank you for joining. If you have questions, I can see some of you are here now. Please ask it in the comment box. Okay, Srijoni is asking, do we absolutely need the Pearson book? Aryanth won't do. Yes, Aryanth will do. If you have a hard copy of Aryanth and a soft copy of Pearson, then I suggest you refer to the soft copy of Pearson. But if you have hard copies of both, then obviously Pearson. Actually, there is not much difference except the fact that the chapters of logical reasoning and data interpretation are better explained in Pearson. So is the chapter on teaching aptitude. Actually, the ideal way of preparing for the NET exam is to refer to different books for different chapters, but then I guess that is too much for most of you. Most of you are doing B.Ed or doing something or the other, so it's not possible for you to refer to separate books for all the separate chapters. We did it back in the day when we were in our MA. We referred 6 books for 8 chapters. But then if you can do it, then there is nothing like it. I had also, I believe I had mentioned that I would be sharing with you a trial paper. Let me just quickly share that with you. Others, if you have a question, this is a trial paper which I had made among the many If you have questions, please feel free to ask, because there's no reason why you shouldn't. Especially if you have like odd doubts, questions which you think are too silly to ask, now is the time to ask them. I will wait a minute. It's 8:50 now. I will wait till 8:51. If you have a question, I strongly recommend that you ask it. Any question like when will the next net be held? Answer is I don't know, but my guess is June. Or anything actually you want to ask. Okay, thank you everyone for joining with me, especially just after the pujos. Once again, Shubho Vijaya to everyone. Rangon joined late. Shubho Vijaya to you as well. To everyone who commented, starting from Diptosri, Shoilaj, Medhasri, Raesha, Odrija, Dipjit, Momita, Shoilaj, Rangon, Srijoni, Raesha. Yes, Rasha, KVS Madan's book is the one I will recommend, the Pearson one. Thank you, everyone, for commenting, and thank you for joining, Raisha, everyone. It was a great experience. Thank you so much, and I hope I will see you soon. Tata.